1.
Hi everyone, in our podcast today we're going to be talking about sleep, specifically sleeping in space. Sleep is something that every human needs, but did you know that sleeping in space is actually extremely difficult? Many people might think it's easy floating around in zero gravity, but astronauts actually face a lot of challenges. One of the main reasons is that the human circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is basically our body's internal sleep clock, and it's controlled by the sun rising and the moon rising. It's telling our body when it's time to be awake and when it's time to sleep. On Earth, it works naturally with sunrise and sunsets, but in space, astronauts don't have the same cycle. For example, in the ISS, which orbits the Earth every 90 minutes, astronauts see a total of 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets in a single day, which completely confuses the brain clock, making it very hard for astronauts to get proper rest.
So, what are some issues that arise from not having enough sleep in space?
Some issues are that the astronauts get less sleep, and sleep is a necessity, so the sleep loss can cause very big issues for humans. For example, the cosmonauts operating advanced machinery end up not being able to do it properly because of sleep loss, leading to something hitting the International Space Station. To prevent this, all astronauts communicate to sergeants and doctors of any issues they are facing to be on peak performance. Mental health walks and caffeine are used by most astronauts and have a positive impact. On the contrary, sleep medication does not benefit people in space that much. There are sleep stations present on the ISS to prevent free-floating astronauts from sleeping, and these sleep stations do not let you change the temperature on demand. However, every astronaut can counteract this through extra layers of clothing for insulation. Overall, the sleep stations support sleep. Airflow can be controlled to a certain extent, and some airflow needs to be happening continuously because of the CO2 expenditure. Lights in the sleep station go from blue to red to mimic Earth situations, and they act as an artificial sun to keep the circadian rhythm stable. However, they can also be turned off on demand.
So Garrett, how are scientists improving sleep conditions for astronauts?
Scientists are also carefully studying how astronauts sleep in space so they can better understand the challenges they help the astronauts face. NASA uses special monitoring devices that track the movement, heart rate, and sometimes the brain activity while the astronauts take their rest. This allows the scientists to observe and collect real data instead of just asking astronauts how they feel. They compare sleep patterns before the astronauts leave Earth, during the time they're in space, and after they return home from Earth. By comparing all these differences, researchers in the field can see how microgravity and the space environment affect the body. The research helps them create better tools, schedules, and environments to improve sleep for future missions.
Something that affects astronauts' sleep in space is sleep inertia. Sleep inertia is when you wake up from a nap feeling even more tired than before you went to sleep. Some ways researchers have helped astronauts combat this are by advising them not to engage in activities that are mentally demanding for 20 minutes after waking up to let the sleep inertia wear off. But also, things like caffeine can help with the effects of sleep inertia. What are different ways sleep is negatively affected?
So, besides the body clock problems, astronauts also face many physical challenges that make sleep hard. In microgravity, the body does not feel normal pressure that humans feel on Earth, since there isn't any gravity, so muscles relax in a different way, and the spine can stretch, which can cause back pain and discomfort. Fluids in the body also move toward the head, since there isn't any gravity, instead of staying balanced, which can cause a stuffy nose, sinus pressure, which is swelling in your face, and changes in breathing. This can make it harder to sleep and affect our sleep structure. So, Sai, what is sleep structure?
Sleep structure is a different type of sleep you can get. Astronauts get less deep sleep and less REM sleep in space, which means they may not be fully rested when they wake up. The system that controls balance is affected too, which can cause dizziness or space motion sickness, especially at the start of a mission. Body temperature is another problem because when we sleep, our body temperature drops. And in space, heat does not leave the body easily, so it is harder to cool down and fall asleep. The heart also works differently in space, and this can also change and affect energy levels, in turn affecting astronauts' sleep and activeness. On top of that, there's a constant noise from machines and air systems, about loud as a hairdryer, which is 67 decibels, which leads to lighter and more broken sleep. All of these physical changes make sleeping in space much harder than people expect. All of these changes happen because of microgravity.
One way that studies done on Earth can help space exploration and quality of life in space is through analog environments. Analog environments are closed environments that can resemble space, but with room to change many different variables for research purposes. One research center used to study sleep in space is called the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. One example of a study done at the Space Center is when they studied 4 people at a time for 45 days. They studied the sleep of these people, and found they got 5 hours of sleep during the week and 8 hours of sleep during the weekend. The researchers looked at how well they performed, how well they interacted with each other, and if they had mood changes or stress. These types of studies would not be able to be performed in space because they cannot change specific variables or use the same equipment to study participants. Thanks for tuning in.